Ohio State lands an elite receiver. Notre Dame gets a big-time running back. USC strikes twice, and so does Ole Miss. And oh yeah, Washington kept a big-time player at home. There's a lot of recruiting news to talk about on the Portal Podcast.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Today is a rundown, a recruiting blitz, if you will, because this past weekend from Friday through Sunday, big-time players across the country. Ole Miss gets 2, USC gets 2, Notre Dame gets their guy at running back. You have Ohio State getting one of my favorite wide receivers in the class of 2026. Indiana gets a big-time player from inside. There are a lot of good players coming off the board, so let's get started. First off, congrats to USC. They are right now, if not the best recruiting class in the country. Who would you pick? They're approaching 30 commitments. This is a really, really unique scenario. I don't think I've seen a run like this for USC since Pete Carroll was in town. Maybe it's a different deal because you get more scholarships to offer in a class. You can look at it that way. But at the same time, USC is not just spending scholarships on mediocre players. So 2 guys. Number 1, Elbert Hill from Ohio. That's interesting. He's a Northern Ohio guy. Big-time corner, depending on the recruiting service. He's a 5-star, 4-star. And he is physical. Not the biggest guy, 5'10 and a half, 5'11", but he is put together like a pro boxer, and he's physical. If you have DBs like that, especially in today's game, taking on the run, making sure your fit is right in the screen game, because that's not friendly for DBs. You're going to have a tight end or an offensive lineman coming after you. You got to understand what you're doing. You're going to get rolled. Elbert Hill's a guy that can be in that mix as well. It could be a slot. He could be that guy that could come in and cover that spot, be a blitzer too, because again, he is physical. USC needed to be more of a power football team on offense. There's been discussion about that, and they've trended that way. Well, you needed that too on defense. Elbert Hill is a great fix for that situation. They also did well enough in the recruiting class so far. They don't need to get a lot more D linemen. They're pretty much where they need to be. But when you look at the rest of their class, they still didn't have the big-bodied receiver. A little bit under the radar, but 6'4", 210. Luke Weaver is a guy from the greater LA area that SC keeps home. Finding boundary receivers is hard. D-line was the spot they needed. Maybe needed a little receiver help, but specifically finding the boundary, I think USC has fixed one of its other key needs. They've had some really good big receivers lately, but they didn't have one yet like this. 6'4", 210. I mean, that's college ready. That's NFL ready in terms of just size. I'm not saying he's ready for the National Football League, to be clear. But Luke Weaver is a very good football player, and SC's concerted effort to keep players in the state of California continues. They're not going to get them all, but the Trojans have missed far too often in prior recruiting classes. Hats off to Lincoln Riley and his coaching staff and everybody in the back office. Really nice pickup. I think it'll go underrated a little bit, but Luke Weaver is a nice pickup. Speaking of programs with 2 big-time commitments, Ole Miss, 2 kids that I've had a chance to be around, and I'm going to start with the one that I know the best. That's Isaiah Williams, flipping him from Florida. He's from Tavares, just up the road from Orlando. Not that big of a deal if you're thinking about a kid that was, maybe a 3-star or whatever. But depending on the recruiting service, Isaiah Williams is even number 1 ranked linebacker by one of them, but we'll get into that in a second. Florida's down to 1 commitment, by the way. That should never happen at UF at this late juncture of the spring, but Ole Miss is starting to catch fire on the recruiting trail. They've done an incredible job in the transfer portal, but getting Isaiah Williams, a guy that I don't think he's going to play a traditional inside linebacker role. I believe he will play outside linebacker and be primarily a pass rusher. More of a specialist, especially to start his collegiate career in Oxford. But long-term, after Isaiah adds some more weight, I think he could be a speedy pass rusher. 6'2", 235, somewhere in that range is what I project him at. And he might play some nickel linebacker. He might play some over the slot. He's very athletic. He could really run. But Isaiah Williams is a really good football player, regardless of how you want to look at it. The other kid they got is shot out of a cannon. Demarius Yates. He's out of DeKalb, Mississippi, Kemper County. They had a kid last year, Mario Nash Jr., that signed with Florida State. That's a good program. Ole Miss keeps a player home that fits Lane Kiffin's offense to a T. Speed, elusiveness, and a tremendous, not just a good, a tremendous receiver out of the backfield. I had a chance to see Yates at the Under Armour camp in New Orleans. When I was watching the running backs, there were several that were definitely SEC, ACC, that kind of level, but I thought Yates was definitively the best player there. Running backs usually smoke the linebackers in one-on-ones, and they should. But he was beating guys by 4 and 5 yards. Short route, under, run a post, stop and go. It didn't matter. Demarius Yates could play in the slot at Ole Miss, and I'd be cool with it. He'd eventually get it. Now, he's not the biggest dude in the world. He's 5'9.5", 5'10", but he's put together, a little over 180 pounds, and Demarius Yates can flat out run. Once he gets a step on somebody, there are very few players that will catch him. I can only imagine the conversation that Lane Kiffin had with him on, this is how I'm going to utilize you in the offense. He was just there this past weekend to make the decision to pick the Ole Miss Rebels, and Demarius Yates is going to walk into a situation where I think he's going to play. They've got some good running backs that'll have eligibility beyond 2025 at Ole Miss, but I don't know if they have anybody as dynamic as Demarius Yates. He is a freaking dude. Love his all-around game. And to be clear, this isn't a guy that's just going to catch the swing pass, run the draw, or the toss sweep, or the option play. He'll run between the tackles. He'll lower his pads, and he'll gain that extra yard. Some plays you just don't have a lot of room. He'll grind it out. But also, even in a space where you're like, I don't think he's getting out of this, he'll make a guy miss or at least fall forward and get those extra yards. That's the difference between good and great. Demarius Yates could end up being an NFL player. And again, I think the fit at Ole Miss is tremendous. When we come back, we're going to talk about Ohio State. They got a big-time receiver. You got Notre Dame with an elite running back and more on the Portal Podcast. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're into plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. All right, Ohio State. They get Caden Dixon-Wyatt, one of my favorite wide receivers in the class of 26 from California, playing at an elite program. He understands how to run routes. He understands when and where to make his cuts. This is a top-end wide receiver by any measurement. And it's no surprise that he picked Ohio State. They like guys with polish. I mean, look at the group they've had over the last 5 to 8 years. It's been pretty ridiculous. He's going to fit right in. Caden Dixon-Wyatt will be a guy that, while I don't expect him to walk in and start because Ohio State's wide receiver depth chart is really good, by his sophomore year, he'll be in the rotation. By a junior, he'll start, and he will eventually make his way to the National Football League. I will be surprised if he doesn't. Here's my number one reason why. Can't say it enough. He understands route running. That sounds very simple, But a lot of guys just say, well, he's faster, this guy's bigger, whatever. Caden Dixon-Wyatt has a little bit of everything, but above all else, he takes his craft seriously. There are a gazillion players that are really good as receivers. That's cool. But how many have advanced skills at this juncture to play at the college level early, especially, again, at a program like the Ohio State Buckeyes? Not everybody. Caden Dixon-Wyatt could have went to Oregon, or he could have went to Texas, or whatever program he wanted. He pretty much had every offer in the country, and he's a top 100 guy by all recruiting services for good reason. I still think he's a guy that should be ranked in the top 50 by everybody, and the reason, again, is polish. Players like him make a big difference when they find a way to get to the school that is going to focus on what they do best at Ohio State. They put guys in the best positions at receiver. I think it's a great pick for him and Ohio State. I'm curious to see how quickly he will make an impact. Notre Dame also came up with a big-time commitment. I did a profile on him this weekend. Javion Osborne from Forney, Texas. This is a kid that is an all-around running back, a little bit thicker than Yates, the kid I just talked about a few minutes ago, going to Ole Miss. But it's a similar deal. Catches well between the tackles, has speed. He gets behind somebody. It's not going to be very often that somebody catches him. And he actually, from talking with him a little bit this weekend through DMs on X, he enjoys the fact that he takes his craft seriously as a pass protector. There is no better way for a freshman to find his way onto the gridiron at a program like Ohio State, Notre Dame, Texas, those kind of programs. If you're a running back, you've got to pass protect immediately, or else you'll sit the bench. They have other guys. I think Osborne will make his way into the lineup a little quicker than some other guys might. And Notre Dame's certainly not shy on running back talent. Jeremiah Love comes to mind. But he's going to leave. They're probably going to lose Jadarian Price. Notre Dame gets a big-time commitment in Javion Osborne. Great kid, too. Really nice young man. All right, now let's move down the list a little bit here. We got some really good players, but the kid that I didn't know about, and I just want to give a shout-out to Washington and their staff for this, Derek Coleman Brusa, a kid out of, I believe it's Kennedy Catholic that he's at. Wow. He is shot out of a cannon, and he's a big body dude. He's probably 6'4", 260, 270, somewhere in that range. I had no idea he was that good. If he was in Florida or Texas or Georgia or Ohio, someplace where there are more scouts, he would be considered a much higher level recruit. Just my opinion. Just more people would see him. But his offer list was elite, and the Washington Huskies kept him home. The difference between the teams that kind of make it their way all the way to the Final Four, or at least contend for it, it's linemen. When Washington went to the finals year before last, they had a pretty good O-line. That was important. Their D-line was a little better than it was probably given credit for. But if you would have added one more player that was in his junior or senior year, like Coleman Brusa, that would have been a different deal for Washington. They might have beaten Michigan. D-line matters, man. And he is a pass rusher. Whether it's using his hands in a variety of moves or just a power move, one-arm stab, two-hand swipe, whatever it may be, that's a big guy that can get to the quarterback. And that's not normal. I think he's one of the better D linemen that I've seen as a strong side guy. I think he'll play strong side end in college. In the country, he's about as good as it gets. Washington got a really, really good player and kept him home. When the Huskies have been good traditionally, they've kept a few more of those guys home. They've lost some guys to Ohio State, to Oregon, and other programs over the last 5-10 years that have cut into their talent. This is a big get for the Huskies. Next up, this is talking about size. 6'8", 330 pounds, going to Syracuse, Samaj Henry out of Pennsylvania. They need more linemen that they're developing in that program. Fran Brown gets it done. Also, Blake Smith, out of the area that I'm from. He's from Indiana. He's going to stay home. He's from Franklin Community High School. He's going to Indiana. That is another big defensive lineman. Never have enough of those guys. 6'3", 275. Congrats to the Hoosiers. And finally, Hudson Dunn. This is really unique. He's from Arizona. He's a linebacker, but he's going to Minnesota. You talk about a weather change from Arizona to Minnesota. That is crazy. So congrats to the Minnesota Gophers. That's going to do it for this podcast in regards to recruiting, but I do have a couple of quick notes. There's one thing that's definite, I'm going to do a podcast about him later tonight. Jared Curtis is going to make his decision. That is, I guess, an additional recruiting note. Georgia or Oregon, which will it be? He announces 5 Eastern, the last that I saw, but it's going to be early this evening. The elite 5-star quarterback comes off the board from Nashville Christian. And 2 points about the transfer portal. AJ Halsey, LSU gets their guy. I think he's by far the best player that was still left in the portal as of this weekend. He commits to the LSU Tigers. He was at New Mexico for a year, then played the last 2 years at Houston. Elite player. I think he's going to be an NFL guy. Very durable, very productive, over 90 tackles. He gets to the football, gets interceptions. Plug and play for the LSU Tigers. That's big time. And also Jalen Brown, a guy that didn't ever figure it out, ironically, at LSU or Florida State. He's now going to Arkansas. We'll see if the speedster from South Florida can figure it out for the Arkansas Razorbacks. Thank you once again for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in and get all your latest recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal news. I'm going to have some more profiles and more information. Again, Jared Curtis tonight. Thank you very much. We will see you again soon on the Portal Podcast.